Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint Netcast number 171, recorded live in my basement, Monday, September 23rd, 2013. I am your host and last night's Emmy winner for the worst netcast ever, Todd Klindt. And I couldn't have done it without all of my fine friends at Rackspace that helped me make the worst netcast ever. I'd like to thank all the little people. And for everybody else, you can go to sharepoint.rackspace.com and find out all about the great SharePoint things that we're doing at Rackspace. We got training stuff there. We got free stuff. We got calendars of stuff. We have links to this very netcast, which is kind of one of those circular things where, you know, you watch the netcast, you see the link to sharepoint.rackspace.com, you go to sharepoint.rackspace.com, and it's a link to this netcast. It's all very Inception-y, but it's all cool. So sharepoint.rackspace.com, check it out. We got this metro-y look. We've redone it a couple of times. The marketing folks have put a lot of hard work into it, so go over there, find out what they got to say. Okay, moving along to production. The production's been going pretty well. I hate to say that because it always feels like it's going to jinx it, but the audio has been good. The last few weeks, the video's been good. I haven't accidentally deleted the netcast lately. That's only happened, 6-7 times tops. Been getting everything out, so that's all pretty good. Have been a little late getting everything published. The YouTube publishing spoils me. So if you go to youtube.com/ToddKlindtNetcast, you can see I've been putting them all out there. Been doing that since the beginning of the year. That is so super easy to publish out there. I do that and then I just kind of want to stop. But I do the RSS feeds and the blog posts and all that. But that's got a little slow, but that's kind of been good because it's been kind of spacing things out because I took Labor Day off. And then later in the production notes, I'm going to be talking about something else. But everything's been going well. If you guys have any suggestions about things I can do, I've made some changes lately. I've been putting lower thirds in, changed my introduction a little bit. If you've got any feedback on that, let me know. Good, bad, otherwise. If the lower thirds are helpful or not. And it's funny now that I'm talking about it, I realize that when I do my lower thirds, it's like this part of the screen. I don't have my camera up high enough, so I give myself a little. There we go. But then I think that looks good with the lower thirds. It gives people an idea of what the URLs I'm talking about are, in case I mumble when I talk, things like that. But again, if you've got any suggestions, the things that I can do better, let me know. Things that you see other podcasting folks do. I'm not proud. I'll steal their ideas. Doesn't hurt my feelings one bit. So send them all over. One thing about that in a production thing, and I'd be curious to see what the people in the chat room think, and you folks, should I change the titles of my netcasts to be more SEO friendly, more search engine optimization friendly? So right now, my titles are just goofy stuff that I make up. I would say that they're funny titles, but I think we all know they're not funny. So let's say that I have titles that are attempting to be funny. That seems fair. But I was watching another netcast today, and they were talking about how they recently changed from that because they want, like when people are going to YouTube, for instance, searching for things, seeing things. The fun ones, like last netcast's title was "Horrible Thing I've Created." Well, that's not descriptive. Nobody knows what that is. So Jack is suggesting I should stop using the term netcast and not use podcast, but use Toddcast. I had never thought of that. I like that. Jack. So in the chat room, all the votes are for the fun titles. I noticed nobody's calling them funny titles, but fun titles. I see what you guys are doing there. But again, if you're reading this, download this, hop over to toddklint.com/netcast171 and leave your feedback there. I don't know that necessarily having descriptive titles is a thing keeping me from breaking on and getting 10,000 downloads a week or anything like that. I think there's a quality issue that's going to stop me long before that. But it was just something that was an interesting discussion to have because I do have the fun, not funny titles. And search engine optimization is just kind of a big thing these days. There's a lot of stuff out there. You got to do something to differentiate yourself. So let me know what you think about that. Shoot me an email, todd.klindt@rackspace.com. Hit me up on Twitter @ToddKlindt, however you want to do that. Also, so the final thing is there will be no Netcast next week. So whatever next week is, don't tell me I know this one. The 23rd of September, there will not be a Netcast because I will be in Europe and I will not have any kind of an internet connection. So you get the week off. But that'll be okay. All right, so let's go on to topics, the things that you all are here for. You don't want to hear me. So apparently, yes, there will be a Netcast on the 23rd because today, right now, don't look now, but it's the 23rd right now. There will not be a Netcast on the 30th. See, I clicked the thing, and yes, the 30th of September, there will not be a Netcast. I'm standing by my story that there will be a Netcast on the 23rd, almost positive. The 30th, though. I transcend time and space. Yes, a week from today, there will not be a Netcast. Whatever the date is where you're at, I'm not judging, but I think it'll be the 23rd. The 30th, yeah, I got it on my notes here and I can't get away from it. Oh, goodness sakes. Enough about that. Stop talking about dates in the chat room. Throwing me off. Okay. Math's hard. So on to the topic. So the first topic I want to talk about is updating my blog to SharePoint 2013. A few things that have happened in the last week. So last week I talked about how an anonymous commenter left a comment on my blog about how I could fix my blog homepage by activating a feature, the blog homepage feature, crazily enough. So I did that. That fixed my front page issues. So thanks to that guy. And so that did fix that issue. That is great. Part of what I've spent the last week doing is kind of following some of my own advice. And this was a funny thing. Last week I was talking to a customer about upgrading, and I've got this spiel. I've been doing upgrades for forever now, and so I've got this well-worn spiel that I go into. And one of the things I always talk about is don't upgrade crap. And when I get into the don't upgrade crap part of my talk, it's about how, there are basically two things that foil quick and easy upgrades. You can't see my fingers. Two things. One of the things is custom anything. So custom solutions, custom branding, custom anything will trip up upgrades and make them more difficult. So custom anything is one problem. The other thing that will trip up upgrades is lots of anything. Lots of site collections, lots of databases, lots of lists, lots of items in a list. Lots of anything will make your upgrade go less smoothly. So part of that is not upgrading crap. So if you've got any crap you can get out of your system now, site collections you're not using, customizations you're not using, solutions you've got installed that you're not using, any of that crap, if you can get it out of your farm now without causing any problems, is going to make your upgrade go more smoothly. And so that's kind of that whole thing there. So I was thinking about that as I was talking to this customer about don't upgrade crap, and I thought, every time I test this blog thing, there's about 7 things that I need to fix. I should just go fix those on my blog and not upgrade crap. So that was one of the things that I did this last week. I deleted a bunch of unnecessary stuff that was on my blog. I had some webs that I hadn't touched since 2006. And then, so I just kind of cleaned a bunch of that stuff. I had some site collections in that content database that I wasn't using. So I deleted those. Something I've been meaning to do forever is rearrange some PowerPoints and some PDF files that I had under /blog. When I first started my blog, I didn't organize it very well. Not that today's example of my blog is a great example of a well-organized blog, but I had a bunch of documents under /blog, which was easy for people to find. But then if you ever searched anything on my blog, those dumb documents had come up in there. So it was just one more piece of cruft. So a long time ago, I created a slides web app. So toddklindt.com/slides. And then each event that I speak at, I put my slide decks and stuff in there. Much better. I can give people a short URL to it. It'll take them right to the event that I spoke at. And it keeps them out of my blog search. but I hadn't ever moved my old stuff out. So I went ahead and did that, and I did that really easily. I just created, I don't have all the publishing stuff turned on my blog, so I just created a subweb with publishing turned on, and then I could use the content and structure tool, and then it made it super easy. I just went back into the blog thing, picked those documents, and I could pick multiples at a time, moved them over to the right spot. So that was pretty easy. Cleaned that crap up, and then just various other housekeeping things. I had discussion lists that I'd never used and things like that. So just cleaned up some crap on my blog. Hopefully none of you people that went to my blog today, which is like my mom probably, noticed any of that. Hopefully it was all behind the scenes and it didn't break anything or any of that. So after I did that, I made a copy of my content database because I've got my big backups go on Sunday morning, so I did most of that cleanup yesterday. And then I'll take that database, and that's the one I'll play with next. So that was one thing that I did to kind of get things going. One of the problems that I noticed after the upgrade the last time, after I fixed the blog homepage, was my blog posts and comments don't seem to be connected. So if you go to a blog post, it will tell you how many comments there are, but you can't actually go to them. So I need to look at that. Now, some other anonymous poster put a post in put a comment in Netcast 170 that had some ideas for stuff to try. So I'll probably do those in my test environment, which is right over here. Well, not over here. It would be over here on my other machine. I've got a 2010 test environment where I bring that database in and test that stuff. So it's coming along. It's happening. Probably soon I will have a blog about upgrading my blog, and then as we test things, you guys can leave comments in that blog post so we have a place to look at, or maybe I'll create a subweb or something. I don't know what I'll do, but I'll give a place for you guys to go, because that way I can lean on you guys to help me test it. And and that's another one of the things that I always do is I tell the IT department to have the users test the upgrades and that kind of stuff. So I will again follow my own advice on that. So thanks in advance to all that help, and thanks to those two anonymous posters that helped me out. I wish they would tell me who they were so I could give them some proper cred, give them some shout outs here. Okay, so here's a fun piece of advice, and you guys probably already know this, but I have been asked to speak at the SharePoint Conference. My goodness, hush, hun. I've been asked to speak at the SharePoint Conference in March. So that is the big SharePoint Conference I've been talking about for the last couple of netcasts. It is, I don't even remember the dates now, March something something to March something something. Oh, goodness gracious, I didn't put the dates in my thing. I got so excited. March 3rd through the 6th. Out in Las Vegas. It's at the Venetian Hotel, and Shane and I will be doing a pre-conference session on install, things like that, install setup, just basically IT pro type things. It's going to be an all-day deal. Last time I looked, they did not have the price out there. These things are usually not for free. Usually it's on top of the cost of the conference, but again, the last time I looked, which was Friday, I think, the prices weren't out there. And yes, Lori in the chat room brings up a good point that the conference is the 3rd through the 6th, but since my session is a pre-conference session, it is on the 2nd. So you'll want to make sure that you go out at least a day early, get good and comfortable, and do all that. Some folks in the chat room are talking about travel budgets. They do have a thing on SharePointConference.com on here's how you justify your travel and all that. I think telling them that you'll get to see me should probably do it. I don't know that you'll need much more. That pretty much should seal the deal right there. But if you need a note, let me know. I'll scribble something down. Dear Doug's boss, please let Doug come to Vegas. I promise to keep him sober and out of jail. Love, Todd. I would do that. I would do that. It's just another service I provide. Not a big deal. But you can go to SharePointConference.com, get registered for the conference, get registered for my pre-conference session. It will be a good time. I promise. So another conference that I wanted to talk about, but sadly is not as happy of a story, is the PowerShell Summit. And it's too bad that Teresa Wilson left. The scripting guy's wife was in here for a while. I could have done this earlier. The PowerShell.org folks are having the PowerShell Summit. That is also next year. It is April 28th through the 30th. It is in Redmond. It's at the conference center there in Redmond. I can't remember the name of it. If I remember, it's tough to pronounce. I just didn't even put it in my notes. So it's going to be all kinds of PowerShell. It's going to be PowerShell. They're going to have product-specific tracks, so stuff like SharePoint and Exchange and all that kind of stuff. The bad news is I will not be able to attend. I talked to Don a little bit about this. Don Jones is the guy that's putting it on, and I cannot go. I have a family obligation that week, and so I can't travel that week. So, but just because I can't go doesn't mean you shouldn't go. You can't, like I said in my blog post on this, you can't be a good SharePoint administrator without being a good PowerShell user. So, if you're out there in that area, go to the PowerShell conference, PowerShell Summit. You can go to PowerShell.org and get a whole bunch of information about it, or go to my blog. I got a blog post on it as well. All right, for those of you who are regular viewers, or just viewed last week, either one, this will get you either way. We talked last week about whether or not SharePoint 2013 was supported on Windows 2012 R2. And I was kind of making fun of some folks who'd been on Twitter and had been kvetching about how there was no official statement on whether SharePoint 2013 worked on this not RTM version of the server yet. Bill Bear at Microsoft, it's like he heard my pleas. It's like he sat down and he watched my Netcast, and he's like, you know, that guy Todd, he's got a good point. I should put something out. So last week, Bill Bear both blogged and created a KB article that explains the supportability for SharePoint 2013. And the official word from Microsoft is that SharePoint 2013 is not supported on Windows 2012 R2 until Service Pack 1 for SharePoint 2013. And who knows when that is. They gave no idea about that. And Trevor in the chat room mentioned, yes, they have kind of changed how the whole RTM thing is. So I think technically Windows 2012 R2 is RTM'd, but it is not GA or generally available. So it hasn't met general availability yet, but it is released to manufacturing. So that mystery's been solved. SharePoint 2013 does not work on Windows 2012 R2. It's not supported, excuse me. But when Service Pack 1 comes out, that will add support. So far, the only issue I personally have seen has been with the prereq installer and getting IIS set up right. On Bill's blog, he had some examples of stuff that doesn't work. It was also the prereq installer. It was also the IIS part. So I don't know if that's the only piece that doesn't work. I don't know. So if you want to be safe, though, you're just going to have to keep rocking with Windows 2012, and hopefully your friends that are running Windows 2012 R2 won't make too much fun of you for having cruddy old Windows 2012 servers, because that OS is like a whole year old. How embarrassing. But I was glad to have the official word out about that. So good. So here's another great knowledge base article, and this was, man, I don't remember. Oh, so I also hang out at the forums at arstechnica.com. Good place, been there forever. Been at Ars Technica longer than I've been doing SharePoint upgrades, which is funny to think about. But somebody posted a question there about the ever-present DCOM errors with SharePoint. So for at least the last 3 versions of SharePoint, once you get SharePoint installed and everything's working, you get these darn DCOM 10,016 and 10,017 errors in your server event logs. And so he was asking what the skinny was on those, if you could fix them, all that kind of stuff. And so kind of the big takeaway from this, we've all seen those. There's nothing new. Things like the Auto SP installer fix them automatically. It's a permissions error. It's a pain. But the important thing was I actually looked this up again, because his question was mostly around whether it was a problem or what wasn't going to work. And KB article 920783 is about this issue, tells you how to fix it, but it also contains this specific phrase. Under the workarounds session, it says you can safely ignore the event ID error messages 10,017 or 10,016 that are logged in the system log. So that's the official word from Microsoft. You can ignore them. Now, nobody likes to see those error messages, so we all go in and give the account the permission to the WAM reg and all that, but you don't have to. You're not going to break SharePoint if you don't. It's all good. So that was just a good one to have the final answer to. So this is another fun one that I was talking to somebody about today. And this might be something that I blog myself, despite the fact there are already blogs out there about it. And they're talking about doing a SharePoint migration from one farm to another, and they were curious about how to do that without it being as, I don't want to say disruptive, but as jarring for the end users. And I said, well, and so they were saying, well, we'll have to do this thing, we'll have to go to our load balancer and redirect this thing and stand up another server and set up this thing. I'm like, no, that's way too much work. ASP.NET, which SharePoint runs on top of, has this support for an app offline file. And if you take a file and you name it exactly app_offline.htm, so app_offline.htm, if you drop it in the directory for your ASP.NET application, which in our case is SharePoint, when ASP.NET gets a request, it looks for that file first, and if it finds that file, it just renders it. So it essentially keeps anybody from getting into SharePoint or doing whatever. So you can do whatever you need to SharePoint, pull all your content databases out, do whatever, as long as that virtual directory is there, and you drop that file in there, you can put whatever you want, and nobody can ever get to SharePoint or whatever you're doing. So it's great for things like outages and that kind of stuff. So in the case of the example that I was showing somebody, I took that app offline file, I created one, and I put it in C, inet pub, wwroot, WSS, virtual directories, and then intranet .contoso.com 80. So every one of your web apps has a directory in there. You just dropped it in there. So obviously you can leave the file name something else, and then when you need it, just go in to rename it to app_offline. I hate when this happens. Oh, it's the phone, folks. So it works like a champ. It almost works too easily, the app offline file. Now, one thing that I did find, there's two gotchas. I've used this before with people. Two gotchas. Number one, if the app offline file itself is less than 500 kilobytes, then IE, Internet Explorer, doesn't think it's a valid file, and instead of giving you that file, gives you a friendly error message. And that error message is 404. It says file not found, even though it can find the file, it just doesn't want to render it. So if your app offline file is not very complicated, doesn't have a bunch of stuff in it, then you need to put a comment in there and fill it out so it's over 500K, or else you get this goofy thing. And again, easy enough to check. Put it in there, hit it with IE. If you get the 404, then you know that it's not big enough. The second thing, I found this out the hard way with a customer, and it's hysterical that I fell for this, but they wanted the app offline thing, and then there was like a link to talk to the help desk and all that, but they also wanted their corporate logo in the corner. So I said, no problem. And we dropped it in, I can't remember where we dropped it, but the place that we dropped it, we had also put the app offline in. So the web page pulled up the app offline file, saw the href to the image, tried to pull the image, got an app offline file, and didn't get the image. So if you want to put images in there, and you can do whatever you want, it's just an HTML page, but put your images someplace else. So for this customer, the quickest thing that we had was Dropbox. So we just had the image that they wanted in Dropbox, put a link to that in the HTML file, and then it rendered just fine. But don't put it in a web app that you're taking offline, because obviously that doesn't work. So that was a lesson well learned. But that sounds like something that I might blog for SharePoint folks, just to show the directories and put all this stuff, all these gotchas in one spot. Yeah, Dropbox in the chat room, they're laughing about that. Dropbox was just the cheapest or quickest place to put it. Okay, so this was another thing last week. Had a customer, they were trying to do some BI stuff with SharePoint, and I can't remember if it's 2010 or 2013. We'll say 2013, but their BI stuff was failing. And so I was talking to them like, well, here's the prerequisites, blah, blah, blah. You need SQL 2012, SP1. And they said, oh, yeah, we got SQL 2012 SP1. They said that's what we deployed with. And they were just getting around to getting their BI stuff working. And like the cobwebs in the back of my head were like whistling a little bit. And I'm like, how soon after SP1 came out did you download it? And they said, oh, right away we knew we needed it for SharePoint. So there is a little known bug where the initial version of the SQL 2012 with SP1 install, the ISO, so you didn't have to download the thing. You just downloaded the SQL 2012 install and it had SP1 baked in. It didn't really have SP1 baked in. Fooled you. So if you downloaded it like in the first month or so, you thought you were installing SP1, except you really weren't installing SP1. So if you've got a server, make sure, see when the date is. And I linked in here a knowledge base article that tells you about that. There's a specific date where they fixed it. But go out and check and see if you've got that. If so, delete it and just go download it again from MSDN or whatever. But that one, that one's a tricky one. That was no fun at all to troubleshoot. But and then for our next topic, if you are fortunate enough to actually get SP1 installed, there's another knowledge base article that talks about a bug where it freaks out your Windows installer, and I've actually seen this a few times, where it repeatedly tries to install some SQL tools and things like that. And there's a resolution for that. There's a patch and all that. But that's if you happen to get the right image that actually has SP1, then you're going to see these Windows installer errors, and there's a patch that fixes all those. So that was a couple of related SQL issues. But that was yeah. So if you downloaded this in November of 2012, I'm looking at the knowledge base thing here, you might not actually have SP1. That was a hysterical one. That was funny. Okay. So that is all of my SharePoint-y topics, but there was kind of a big deal today. If you were out on Twitter or went to any tech enthusiast website ever, anywhere today, the big story today was that Microsoft had their marketing announcement, their big thing about the Surface 2. So all kinds of great information. You can't buy the things yet, but they had all the gritty technical details and things like that. So I kind of wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about that. I've kind of embraced the whole Surface thing, and I even broke down a week ago, got myself a Windows phone, got a Nokia 920. Haven't moved everything over to it yet, but just trying to embrace the whole thing. So so here's Trevor in the chat room's kind enough to tell me my Surfaces are already out of date. Not for another month, Trevor. These Surfaces are awesome for like 29 more days, and then they're crap. So I just kind of want to talk about this a little bit. Like I said, this has been covered to death, and way better than I'll be able to cover it on every tech enthusiast site under the sun. You just can't go to a place that doesn't have a story about it. But I did want to talk about it a little bit because I have been playing with the Surfaces. I kind of like the Surfaces, kind of a thing that I've been doing. So one of the things that I took from reading the live tweets and all that kind of stuff was that Microsoft is continuing down the road that they started with the first set of Surfaces. And so that's this idea that you're going to have a tablet, like a iPad type Android tablet thing. That's going to be the RT model. And then there's going to be this like power tablet that's going to be the Pro model. And that was kind of the paradigm they set up with the first set of Surfaces, and they very much stuck to that. They very much stayed the course on that. And I think for the most part that was a good idea. And they stayed the course to the point where the devices look exactly the same. They're exactly the same size, with a couple of exceptions. But if you didn't know to look for it, you could very easily not be able to pick them out from each other. So the same form factor, which means a lot of the accessories are interchangeable with a few exceptions, but same 10 point whatever inches, all that kind of stuff. One thing that we get though is if one click is good, then 2 clicks must be better. Oh my goodness, so now the Surface 1 has 1 click, the Surface 2 has another click a little farther back, so the thing sits back a little farther, makes it easier to use in your lap, things like that. So So that's good. And in the chat room, they're talking about prices. We will go over prices in a minute. I have that in my notes, but for those of you in the chat room, I'll go ahead and throw that link out there right now. So again, they've kind of stuck with the same thing. I think that's a good idea. Windows 8 kind of got a bad rap, and the Surface got a bad rap. And I think by staying the course, Microsoft did a good thing. Jack in the chat room is talking about my decal here. Yeah, you can get this at skinit.com. Well, you can't get this one, but get Skinit. And it's very shiny. If you look, you can see yourselves in the reflection right there. That's you guys in the chat room. So yes, all the Skinits will work too. So let's talk about first they've got the two models. Let's talk about the Surface 2 first. The Surface 2 is the next one, the next RT device. So it's not going to be called Surface RT. It's going to be called Surface 2, but it will be running Windows 8.1 RT. It has the next version of the Tegra processor. The current RT, the one that's powering that right there, is running the Tegra 3. The new ones, the Surface 2, will run the Tegra 4. That's one more Tegra. And that Tegra 4 runs at 1.7 gigahertz, so a little bit of a speed increase. The USB port on the side is now USB 3, which is obviously upgraded the chipset and all that. The display has been upgraded from 13 whatever by whatever to 1920 by 1080, so the screen is way more, way better looking. They're estimating that the Surface 2 is going to have 10-ish hours of battery life. Those are always pretty subjective depending on what you're doing, but they're saying they expect you to get 10 hours. I get a whole lot of hours with the Surface RT. I haven't checked it out, but it's a good 8 or so probably now. So that's not a huge increase, but the name of the game now is battery life, so that's a good thing. The hardware, the Surface 2s, like the Surface RT before it, will have 2 gig of RAM, no increase there. And for storage, they will have 32 gig of storage or 64 gig of storage. And the price for those, the 32 gig model, is going to start out at $449, and the 64 gig model is going to start out at $549. And that's not a big, so I think one of the big things that doomed the original Surface was the price. Those two prices are only $50 less than the comparable models of the Surface RT. So I don't think, I don't know that that's going to help much. But for the RT type device, we've got that. That's the Surface 2. The next device is the Surface Pro 2. So that's the next version of this little devil right here. Again, same size-ish. Not really going to be able to tell the difference. It has a Haswell-based i5 processor in it, and Haswell is just the chipset and all that. What that means for us lay people is better battery life. And they're saying for the Surface Pro 2, expect 7 hours of battery life. And that was one of the ways that the original Surface Pro got dinged, was the battery life was not great, about 4 hours. So they've almost doubled the battery life on that. The Surface Pro 2s will come, there will be 4 models of those out of the chute. There'll be a model, there'll be 2 of them with 4 gig of RAM, and that'll have 4 gig of RAM with 64 gig of storage, or 4 gig of RAM with 128 gig of storage. And those will run you, is everybody sitting down? 4 gig of RAM with 64 gig of storage will run you $899. 4 gig of RAM with 128 gig of storage will run you $999. They will also have a model with 8 gig of RAM, and the lowest model will be 8 gig of RAM with 256 gig of storage at $1299. And then at the top level, they will have a model with 8 gig of RAM and 512 gig of storage, and that one will cost you $1799. Ooh, so they definitely did not learn the lesson on pricing on those. So that is unfortunate. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that both of these will have will have the micro SD storage. So for my RT device, I don't have a lot of things installed, but I'm watching movies and stuff. So I've got a 64 gig micro SD card. I apologize. In the chat room, Mark's wife was standing up when I said those prices, and she probably fell over when I got. So I apologize. I should have given more time to give everybody a chance to be sat down, or at least standing next to something soft. So that's pretty expensive. All of the Surface devices, you can pre-order them tomorrow, and I'm completely date challenged right now, but I'm going to guess that tomorrow is September 24th. You can go out to Microsoft.com, and they'll have a link there, and you can pre-order those. They're not planning on shipping those until October 22nd, so you got about a month to talk yourself out of dropping down $1,800 for a tablet that doesn't come with a keyboard. So we've got that. Now, they also announced a bunch of accessories today, and that's a cool story. Doug in the chat room is trying to screw me up, and the sad part is, Doug, it probably would work. Do that again, you'll probably convince me. So they announced a bunch of accessories, and so we had some old friends there that kind of got gussied up a little bit, and then we had some new ones too. So again, the form factor is the same. So your existing touch and type covers will work with Surface 2 and Surface Pro 2. But there are new versions, Touch Cover 2 and Type Cover 2, and kind of the big things with those are they will come in more colors now, so you can get purple and, a bunch of other stuff. But also they are backlit, which is pretty cool. So if you get a touch cover or a type cover, they'll have backlighting. The touch cover now has, I think they were saying, and I didn't read it all, that the current touch cover, so the one that I've got over here, has 80 pressure points or 80 sensor points or something. The touch cover 2 has over 1,000. So hopefully that keyboard will suck less, I guess. But then they'll also have the type cover. So the illuminated keys, the other thing is there will be a dedicated function key row. So the existing keyboards have a row at the top that has buttons like mute and play and fast forward. And if you hold down the function key, then they're F1, F2, F3. The new keyboards, the type cover 2 and touch cover 2, will have both of those keys, so you don't have to know the secret handshake to refresh a web page. So those are good. And again, they got the colors. Now they talked about a bunch of new accessories, and there's some super cool accessories coming out for the Surface 2s. The first one is a power cover, and the power cover is a keyboard, is a type keyboard, not a touch keyboard, but a type keyboard that has a battery in it. And the numbers they were given today is that it will increase your battery life 2.5 times. So if they're saying you're going to get 7 hours of battery life with the Surface Pro 2, then with the power cover you'll get 14, so 17, 18 hours of battery life. That's what they're saying with those. That will cost you $200, and that will be available early next year is what they said. Another thing that they announced today was wireless adapters for the covers. So this is just a little bar. It's a weird looking thing that sits, that just attaches to your keyboard. So it is a thing that sits across the top of your keyboard here that bolts on, that is a Bluetooth transmitter. And so you can take your keyboard and hook that up. It'll hook up to the Bluetooth on your Surface, and then you can have your, because you know that 10-inch keyboard gets so close to your face when it's attached, or the 10-inch screen gets so close to your face, it's tough to see. But like if you want to have your Surface connected to a TV or something, less than 30 feet away, you can put this little Bluetooth dealie on your keyboard. That's going to be $60. That's not too badly priced. And they also released this music mix kit, and I don't have the URL in my notes, but it's like surfacemusicmixproject.com or something. They got Mr. Hahn from Linkin Park to show it, and it is a and I can't even believe that this was a gap that needed to be filled, but it is a touch-like keyboard for the Surface, but it's for music folks, so it doesn't have keys like keypads on it. It's got like a number pad on the side, and you can scratch and mix and all this kind of crazy stuff with some music software on your Surface. I can't imagine those things are going to fly off the shelf, but it looked super cool. It looked like you could program the keys and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So that was crazy. And then they also announced that there's going to be a car charger with a USB charger on it as well, and that's going to be $50 for that. So now, like I said, most of these adapters will work with both the Surface 2 generation and Surface 1, with the exception of the Surface RT. So for a bunch of these new keyboard types and stuff like that, the Surface RT, oh, I forgot one of my notes. They also announced a dock for the Surface devices. That will also be $200, and that's going to have an Ethernet port, though I think it's only fast Ethernet. I don't think it's 1 gig Ethernet. One USB 3, a couple of USB 2s, a mini display port, and all that, and that'll be $200 and available at the beginning of the year. So for most of these accessories, they will work with both Surface 2 and Surface Pro 2 and Surface Pro 1, Surface Pro NOT 2, whatever we're calling it. But the Surface RT won't work with a bunch of these just because that Tegra 3 chipset's just not smart enough to understand everything. So check out the accessories. There's going to be some links. I linked the pricing thing. But again, any tech enthusiast blog or whatever you go to these days is going to have everything for this. So that was pretty cool. I didn't plan on talking about this, but Lori in the chat room asked, has anybody gotten Mouse Without Borders to work with RT? Mouse Without Borders is great, and I use it here at home, that lets you share your mouse and keyboard across multiple computers. So I have 2 monitors here that 2 computers share. I have a TV on the wall that's also a computer monitor that I've got a second computer on, and then I've got a laptop over here that uses that monitor during the day. And with Mouse Without Borders, I can control all 3 machines, and I can move my mouse across all 5 screens. It's kind of cool. Trevor in the chat room saying it sounds like Synergy. It is just like Synergy, except it doesn't do Linux. Lori is asking if it works with RT. I didn't realize they had an app in the App Store for it, so I haven't tried with RT, but that would be super cool if it did. But it's from the Microsoft Garage or Garage Labs or whatever. But that installs, I've only installed it as an executable, and on RT you can only install, store things. But I didn't know they had an app in the store, but I will load that up on this little devil tomorrow and see if that works. That would be cool. But if you have multiple machines and multiple monitors, Mouse Without Borders or Synergy are great tools. So as always, if you got any questions about any of this kind of stuff, let me know. Some of the new stuff's coming out. It's kind of exciting, which is why I've branched out, talk a little bit more about it. All right, so now to the Shameless Self-Promotion. This has gotten kind of short. The year's winding down here, but I did want to mention Scripting Wife was in the chat room earlier tonight. I will be having a blog post on Hey Scripting Guy here in a couple of weeks. That's at blogs.technet.com/b/Hey Scripting Guy. And then, like I said all excitedly before, I will be presenting at the SharePoint Conference, and you can go to sharepointconference.com and find out all about that. And that's really the big things that I've got going on. Next week, I will be at the SharePoint Exchange Forum, or SEF, in Stockholm, Sweden. So I will not be doing a netcast. I will be there. I'll be very excited. It's going to be a great time. Looking forward to catching up with all my friends over there in Northern Europe. So once again, thanks everybody. Chat room's been great tonight. Very lively discussions. If you have any suggestions for things I should chat about, leave me a comment on my blog. Hit me up on Twitter. If you have any fixes for things that I can't figure out, hit me up on my blog or on Twitter. Again, so enjoy your week off. The next netcast will be, don't tell me this one, October 7th. I'll be right here. Hopefully you'll be right there, and some of you over there. But thanks, and have a good night.